Rabbi Abraham Cooper, thank you so much for joining us. Good to have you here.
Nice to be back.
Rabbi, the horrors of what's unfolding in Israel is being broadcasted around the world. Hamas is now threatening to execute hostages live on TV. That's in the case of unannounced Israeli strikes. Your center is calling for Hamas to be charged with crimes against humanity. Give us a sense of just how serious this is.
Well, our center carries the name of a man named Simon Wiesenthal. He was a victim of the Holocaust. He lost 89 members of his family, and he became the famous Nazi hunter and campaigner for justice. So the fact that we carry his name also means that when you see, I never thought I would say this, but when you see Nazi-like actions that in some ways are worse than the Nazis, because one of the great challenges in bringing Nazi war criminals to justice is the Nazis worked very hard to hide the facts of the emerging genocide, of the final solution. The Hamas terrorists are live streaming and broadcasting their crimes against humanity all over the world. And unfortunately now, in the days when Israeli soldiers have finally gotten back full control of the territory, they discover in one kibbutz alone the bodies of 40 babies. The decapitation of babies, and the rest I don't even want to describe. But you have mass murder, you have kidnapping, you have mass rape, and you have here the targeting of civilians, merciless mass murder. This is a very serious issue, and it is something that the international community has, both international law, international tradition, if you will, of the International Criminal Court, the United Nations. There's no shortage of judicial addresses where this can be dealt with. The real issue is will there be political will on the part of any nation in order to hold Hamas terrorism accountable? That's still a big question mark.
And expanding on that, we are seeing world leaders, including some members of Congress, cheering on Hamas. And as you mentioned, children are among the brutally murdered here. Why do you think that is? Give us a sense of what's at the heart of this.
Well, for one thing, the Hamas has always been fighting an asymmetrical war. They know they can't defeat on their own, and even with Iranian help, in a straight military battle against Israel. But their founding charter actually is a genocidal one, and it even invokes the anti-Semitic protocols of the Elders of Zion in their founding document. So say one thing about this group from the beginning, they've said it, and now they've had an opportunity to kill more Jews in a single day, to murder more Jews than any time since the end of the Second World War. And I think because the Palestinian Authority is so thoroughly corrupt, and there are many young Palestinians who've grown up on a steady diet, really, of a war curriculum, even though they're in UNRWA schools and there are 60 donor nations paying for it, they've all been brainwashed and educated, A, to hate Israelis, B, to deny any legitimacy to their neighbors, even being in that land, and C, to embrace a culture of death. So in that sense, the people who are on the ground, those who embrace it, you can perhaps see some context. What is also completely shocking is how the goals of Hamas, no two-state solution, is to get rid of Israel, and the methods that the world has been shocked to see are now all justified in these statements released by student leaders at Harvard, by Students for Justice of Palestine in various elite universities across the United States. And what I've been saying actually for the last few days is we're waiting for presidents of universities to finally start to push back and to basically say, hey, wait a second, you want to stand up for the future rights of your people, the Palestinians, to have their own homeland. If that includes genocide along the way, you'll have to excuse the rest of us if we no longer embrace what it is you're bringing to the table. They're not hearing it from the university elite, quite the contrary. We're not hearing an outpouring from corporate America, although, very interestingly, Major League Baseball now and the NBA, I think Jamie Dimon, a few others, have expressed solidarity with what just happened, this horrific series of massacres. But overall, we still see a gnawing silence. I wouldn't say so much an indifference, but I think a lack of courage on the part of the captains of industry and the people who are supposed to be educating our young people, a failure to draw the line in the sand. And the more you give, in terms of rhetoric, a free pass and justify everything that's said in the name of freedom of speech, the more we're going to see anti-Semitism increase, intimidation of Jews on campus increase, the demonization of Israel, etc. This is a very, very dangerous time, but it's also a moment of opportunity for people to take a deep breath and say, hey, wait a second, when did you sign us up for genocide?
And Rabbi, speaking of the U.S., Americans are also among the dead. The U.S. is sending an aircraft carrier group to that area. Israel has always fought its own wars. But in what ways can the U.S. help Israel?
Well, I think there are two ways. Number one, they're going to need certain kinds of munitions. They're going to need help to make sure they have enough interceptor missiles for the Iron Dome. But more importantly is for the United States to send a signal to Tehran, because the murders here and the hatred is all being expressed by Hamas, but those who did the training and paid the bill are all in Tehran. And so a message has to go out to the Iranians. If you dare cross the line and flip the switch for your other lackeys, Hezbollah, in Lebanon, where they have 150,000 missiles targeting Israel, and many of them with GPS. If that starts, then the United States will probably have to intervene directly. And that means not only to save Israel, but you have the entire Gulf region that would be under the thumb of the Iranians. That could lead to a much wider configuration. And that's something that certainly the United States doesn't want, Israel doesn't want, Saudi doesn't want, but the Ayatollah Khamenei may want it. And the only way he would be stopped is if he saw the calculus and said, no, I can't take on the little devil, Israel, and the big devil, the United States, at the same time. And maybe he'll take a step back from the brink. But it depends really, first, how President Biden puts forward the U.S. Approach, which means full support for Israel, which means a commitment to get out all of the hostages. There are Thai hostages, Italian. It's I think 15 different countries, but certainly making sure that the American hostages, if possible, be brought out safely, condemning Hamas, and sending a signal to the Gulf neighbors that this time we have your back. Whatever we did with the Iranians in terms of releasing $13 billion and loosening sanctions, snapping back those sanctions, adding the Ayatollah Khamenei to the sanction list. There's a lot that the President of the United States and the United States Congress can do, both symbolic and practically. But right now, this is one of the most dangerous moments, I think, in the 21st century.
Rabbi Abraham Cooper, thank you so much for your time.